Javihari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari. Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janarajana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janarajana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Janavala Gopi Janavala Yashura Nandana Raja Janara Yashura Nandana Vraja Janaraja Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikashaya Uttarashata Shishima A.C. Bhaktivedanta Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Karantarashi Bhavatam Ki Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajikashaya Uttarashata Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Gauda Premanandi Haribo. We'll start by reading from the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. This is page 801. The chapter is London, a Dream Fulfilled. Prabhupada commended his 6 London pioneers on succeeding where his sannyasi godbrothers had failed. He told them that because they had chanted Hare Krishna with faith, they had succeeded. They were not great scholars or renunciates, yet they had faith in the holy name and the order of their spiritual master. Prabhupada said that he also was not a great scholar, but that he had staunch faith, the real requirement for spiritual success. A devotee could go to many places and accomplish many things, Prabhupada said, but unless he was free of material motives, he would not be able to implant the seed of bhakti into the hearts of others. Prabhupada cited Shivananda, who had gone alone to Hamburg and tried his best with faith in his spiritual master. Now Krishna was blessing Shivananda with a little success, a storefront temple, newly recruited devotees, an interested professor, and other guests coming and chanting. Even one lone preacher could accomplish many things for Krishna, provided the preacher was free from sense gratification and the desire for profit, adoration, and distinction. Nishthaya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 5th chapter, entitled Lord Rishabhadeva's Teachings to His Sons, texts 10 to 13. I'll just chant the first 3 verses and then I'll do the last verse 3 times. Angse Guru Mayi Bhaktyanu Vitrishnaya Dvandva Titikshaya Cha Savatra Jantor Vyasana Vagatya Jigyasaya Tapaseha Nivritya Matkarma Bhir Mat Kataya Chanityang Mat Deva Sangad Guna Kirtanan Me Nirvaira Samyo Pashamena Putra Chihasaya Deha Gehatma Buddhe Adhyatma Yogena Vivikta Sevaya Pranendriyat Ma Bhijayena Satrayak Sach Shraddhaya Pramacharayena Shashvat Asampramadena Yamena Vacham. This is text 13. I'll just say it 3 times by myself. Sarvatra madbhava vichakshanena jnanena vijnana virajatena yogena drit yudyama sattva yukto lingam vyapohet kushalo ham akyam. Sarvatra madbhava vichakshanena jnanena vijnana virajatena yogena drit yudyama sattva yukto lingam vyapohet kushalo ham akyam. Sarvatra madbhava vichakshanena jnanena vijnana virajatena yogena drit yud yama sattva yukto lingam vyapohet kushalo hamakyam. Synonyms for the last verse that we read. Sarvatra, everywhere. Madbhava, thinking of me. Vichakshanena, by observing. Jnanena, by development of knowledge. Vijnana, by practical application of knowledge. Virajatena, illumined. Yogena, by practice of bhakti yoga. Triti, patience. Udyama, enthusiasm. Sattva, discretion. Yukta, endowed with. Lingam, the cause of material bondage. Vyapohet, one can give up. Kushala, and full of spaciousness. Aham akyam, false ego, false identification with the material world. Translation. O my sons, you should accept a highly elevated Paramahansa, a spiritually advanced spiritual master. In this way, you should place your faith and love in me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You should detest sense gratification and tolerate the duality of pleasure and pain, which are like the seasonal changes of summer and winter. Try to realize the miserable condition of living entities, who are miserable even in the higher planetary systems. Philosophically, inquire about the truth and undergo all kinds of austerities and penances for the sake of devotional service. Give up the endeavor for sense enjoyment and engage in the service of the Lord. Listen to discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always associate with devotees. Chant about and glorify the Supreme Lord and look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. Give up enmity and subdue anger and lamentation. Abandon identifying the self with the body and the home and practice reading the revealed scriptures. Live in a secluded place and practice the process by which you can completely control your life here, mind, and senses. Have full faith in the revealed scriptures, the Vedic literatures, and always observe celibacy. Perform your prescribed duties and avoid unnecessary talks. Always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Acquire knowledge from the right source. Thus, practicing Bhakti Yoga, you will patiently and enthusiastically be elevated in knowledge, and you will be able to give up the false ego. Purport. In these 4 verses, Rishabhadeva tells his sons how they can be freed from the false identification arising from false ego and material conditioned life. One gradually becomes liberated by practicing as mentioned above. All these prescribed methods enable one to give up the material body, lingang vyapo hate, and be situated in his original spiritual body. First of all, one has to accept a bona fide spiritual master. This is advocated by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Shri Guru Parashraya. To be freed from the entanglement of the material world, one has to approach a spiritual master. Tagvigyanarthang sagurum eva bhigachet. By questioning the spiritual master and by serving him, one can advance in spiritual life. When one engages in devotional service, naturally the attraction for personal comfort, for eating, sleeping, and dressing is reduced. By associating with the devotee, a spiritual standard is maintained. The word Madheva Sangat is very important. There are many so-called religions devoted to the worship of various demigods, but here good association means association with one who simply accepts Krishna as his worshipable deity. Another important item is Dvandva Tataksha. As long as one is situated in the material world, there must be pleasure and pain arising from the material body. As Krishna advises in Bhagavad Gita, Tangs Tatakshasva Bharata. One has to learn how to tolerate the temporary pains and pleasures of this material world. One must also be detached from his family and practice celibacy. Sex with one's wife, according to scriptural injunctions, is also accepted as brahmacharya, celibacy. But illicit sex is opposed to religious principles, and it hampers advancement in spiritual consciousness. Another important word is vijnana virajita. Everything should be done very scientifically and consciously. One should be a realized soul. In this way, one can give up the entanglement of material bondage. As Sri Madhvacharya points out, the sum and substance of these 4 shlokas is that one should refrain from acting out of a desire for sense gratification. It should instead always engage in the Lord's loving service. In other words, Bhakti Yoga is the acknowledged path of liberation. Srila Madhvacharya quotes from the Adhyatma, Atmano vihitang karma, varjayit vanya karmanaha, kamasya cha parityago niri hate yahur uttamaha. One should perform activities only for the benefit of the soul. Any other activity should be giving up. When a person is situated in this way, he is said to be desireless. Actually, a living entity cannot be totally desireless, but when he desires the benefit of the soul and nothing else, he is said to be desireless. Spiritual knowledge is jnana vijnana samanvatam. When one is fully equipped with jnana and vijnana, he is perfect. Jnana means that one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, to be the Supreme Being. Vijnana refers to the activities that liberate one from the ignorance of material existence. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Jnanam parat kuyang me yad vijnana samanvatam. Knowledge of the Supreme Lord is very confidential, and the supreme knowledge by which one understands and furthers the liberation of all living entities. This knowledge is vijnana. It's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.9. Jnana Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattataha tattva deham punarjanma naiti mamiti sarjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Ong Gyanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militang Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. These instructions from Lord Rishabhadev to his sons are extremely relevant and also extremely deep. One can only wish to have a father like Lord Rishabhadev. To be instructed in such a way from such a young age or from youth gives one a great advantage in material and spiritual life. And in this particular verse that we're hearing, it shows specifically how self-realization is a science. This whole verse, it outlines the process of bhakti yoga, according to Lord Rishabhadev, who's preaching according to the time, place, and circumstance that he's in. But how is it a science? It's a science because there's a clear methodology by which, if you follow, then you can get a particular result, i.e., you can become self-realized. There are clear do's, there are clear don'ts. And just like any scientific experiment, if you follow the clear do's and don'ts, if you do so under the guidance of a professor, a mentor, then that further guarantees that you'll get the result that you're looking for. So there are many different aspects to this verse which describe all the different aspects of bhakti yoga. I was just going to speak about the ones that stood out to me specifically that I felt were relevant to me at this point in time. Of course, you could probably give class after class on this particular verse because of how long it is and how much it contains. But because we only have this opportunity, I'll just try to keep it short. The first thing that stood out to me was the statement in the verse which says that one should try to realize the miserable condition of living entities. They're miserable even in the higher planetary systems. I've been thinking a little bit about how within material life, within material existence, it's quite natural for people to want to aspire for a high grade of life than what they have now. Generally, what happens, though, is that in trying to aspire to pursue a high grade of life, they forget that misery will still be there. In Vedic times, you would have the karmis who would, through elaborate sacrifices, performing good karma, good works, try to attain a high position in the heavenly planets, where they could have heavenly enjoyment which we cannot even imagine in this particular day and age. But similarly, here on earth, in this world, people aspire to make their own little heaven on earth. How may that look? Well, the same mentality that the karmis might have of trying to work now for a better future, they apply to this one life. And in fact, this is less intelligent because they neglect to think that all the actions they're performing will have a great impact on their future lives. But still, people try to live as though this life is the all in all. So people may go on trying to climb up the corporate ladder with the hopes that if they get a better position, they make more money. As my spiritual master has said in a recent class of his, this is the dharma of the age, to make money and save money. This is what everyone's trying to do. Anyone who's, materially minded, who cares about their future, this is the key to success, to make money and save money. To get a good education for the children, to make investments, property investments, and secure a better future. The person as well, if they are intelligent materially, they'll also look to care for their body. In other words, by increasing their opulences within this life, they hope to attain heavenly enjoyment. But even if you get all these things, what happens? Even if you get all these things, then what? My mother was recently telling me how she was watching a documentary on a lot of celebrities who are quite famous within the past 30, 40 decades and how they've gotten old. So in their prime, some of these celebrities were amazing actors, famous singers, whatever it may be. They were handsome, they were good looking, they were rich, they were popular. They had everything a person could want. But fast forward to 2025, a lot of their situations are quite miserable, and it's actually quite sad. I'm not sure if anyone on this call would know these celebrities. They were more famous in the early 2000s, 90s, maybe 80s as well. But one of them that struck me the most was Bruce Willis. Some of you may know who that is. Yeah. I think he acted in the movie. He became famous through the movies Die Hard, but he's also famous for other acting roles as well. Very handsome guy, in shape. He was like the epitome of masculinity for young men in the 90s through that movie. Fast forward to 2025, he's gone through his career, he's done it all, achieved Oscar nominations, all that sort of thing. But now he has dementia and he can't even remember who he was. So there's some photos of him with his daughter. His daughter's holding his hand, and in the photo, he's just, as most patients with dementia do, just sitting down, staring into space blankly. Can't remember anything, and more or less has become a shadow of what he originally was. An empty shell of a human. Pretty sad, actually. The interesting thing that I was thinking is, actors like him, they have a desire to perform and be someone else, play the role of a hero, be someone other than themselves. In one sense, forget who they are and be someone better. But now this particular person has got dementia and he's forgotten who he is entirely. It's quite ironic. I don't think he would have wanted that. And there are other actors like of his caliber. Jack Nicholson was another one, who some of you may or may not know. Also has dementia. Michael J. Fox, he was big in the movies Back to the Future. He was a cool guy back then, but now, or throughout his whole life, basically, since he struggled with Parkinson's disease. So again, you may get all of these things, but then what? Eventually, if old age doesn't get you, disease will get you, or some other issues in life. There was an instance where in the Ramayana, before Lord Ram was born, Ravana, he was terrorizing the three worlds, from heaven down to the hellish planets even, Yamaloka. But in the course of him doing so, he happened to be on Earth and he ran into Narada Muni. And Narada Muni, he appears at the right place, right time for a particular purpose. He wanted actually for Ravana to speed up the process of him getting bad karma, getting cursed, so that eventually he could be killed by Lord Ram. But he met Ravana while he was terrorizing the earthly planetary systems, and Ravana, he actually had some respect for Narada Muni. Unlike other rishis, other sages who he would kill for sport, he had some respect for Narada Muni. So Narada Muni approached him and he asked him, "Why are you harassing this world of humans, O valiant one? It is already in the grip of death. These people do not deserve to be attacked by you, Ravana, who cannot be overcome even by the entirely heavenly hosts united together. Who would destroy people who are racked by numerous anxieties, surrounded by endless calamities, and who are subject to old age and hundreds of diseases?" So this is many thousands of years ago when the quality of life on Earth was better. But Narada Muni is stating the reality for all of us here on Earth. We're in a situation where we're faced with so many anxieties, surrounded by endless calamities, and are subject to old age and hundreds of diseases. Yet still people try to make their own heaven on earth in this place. It's almost safe to say that the heavenly planets in this day and age of Kali Yuga is, closed off, it's shut off to us human beings today, so we can't really hope to get there. But still, people try to make a better future. So a devotee should be introspective and understand the miseries of not just this planet, but even on the heavenly planets. On the heavenly planets, it's not that you're free from misery completely. In fact, in the 11th canto, it explains how those who are living on the heavenly planets, they suffer a lot of envy. And they also are fearful of their positions being taken. Like a king who is fearful of other enemy kings taking over his kingdom. They see other people, other demigods in the heavenly planets, and they become jealous and envious. And then you have individuals like King Indra who see people performing austerities in this world, and when it reaches a certain point, he becomes fearful that they might take his position. And then sometimes it's even seen that the demons attack Earth and attack the heavenly planets, and then the demigods have to deal with that. Ravana himself, he subjugated many of the demigods. Hiranyakashipu, he subjugated many of the demigods, and many of them had to run away to escape. So this idea that you will find permanent happiness in the material world is actually an illusion. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says, Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Punar Avartino Juna. From the highest planet down to the lowest, all the places of repeated birth and death and misery. That was something that came to mind when I read that particular aspect of the verse. Something else that stood out to me, probably the last thing that I'll mention because of the limited time we have, was how it explains in the purport that as long as one is situated in the material world, there must be pleasure and pain arising from the material body. And one has to learn how to tolerate the temporary pains and pleasures of this material world. Yeah, it's something that we hear at the very beginning of the Gita, chapter 2, text 14, where Krishna tells Arjuna, Tang Tatikshasa Bharata, to tolerate the coming and going of material suffering and material happiness, which are likened to the coming and goings of the winter and summer seasons. It's a very fundamental principle and idea in our philosophy, but actually is very hard to live by, truly. As I kind of touched on before, dualities within this world, whether it be pleasure, pain, hot, cold, heat, honor, dishonor, whatever it may be, they're unavoidable in this world. Therefore, in order to actually be sane and navigate this one lifetime that we have, or any lifetime, we need to learn to become tolerant. It's not just something that's necessary in spiritual life, but also just a stable material life. In today's day and age, a lot of people are noticing that Generation Zers are not very good at tolerating. In the job field, a lot of employers, they complain that the young people today aren't like how they were. They're not as capable, they're not as socially competent, and they can't stick with a job a lot of the time. The same Gen Zers, young people also, statistics show that they can barely hold down a relationship for more than a year. At the university as well, I also see often, it's not uncommon for people, if they don't like the degree that they're doing, to just switch a degree and do something else, or just drop out, even though they've already invested so many thousands of dollars in the degree. Whereas, even in my time at university, which is basically a decade ago now, if you were going to pay so much money to study a degree, you would stick with that degree to the very end. And of course, before that, you'd take care to make sure you choose something which you could actually do, which you could actually kind of do and get some sort of satisfaction from it, something that was aligned with your nature. So without this quality of tolerance, you can't really achieve much in life at all. As soon as times get tough, you just flake out, like a lot of these young people do these days. Because of instant gratification, because they allow themselves to become victimized by the temporary pleasures of this world. Through lack of sense of control as well, they can no longer tolerate the pains that come inevitably in this world also. In spiritual life as well, this principle of toleration, we have to practice it on a daily basis. In this world, you can suffer in many ways. Through sickness, through the body, sickness of the mind, agitations, disturbances of the mind, other people, other living entities, and ultimately the demigods, the devas, and the disturbances they cause within material nature. Apparently we're expecting a cyclone or something like that, heavy rain very soon, something to look forward to. But most relevant, I think, in an ashram setting is having to tolerate the disturbances caused by other living entities. It's like, because, in the brahmacharya, we try to keep a regulated schedule as close to sattva as possible, if not fully in sattva. The disturbances of the body aren't so intense. It's not like we're going out and, staying up all night, partying and stuff like that, and then having to deal with a hangover the next day. We wake up at the same time, ideally, go to bed at the same time. We eat at regulated times. We only eat in moderate amounts. We don't eat too luxuriously. And therefore, a lot of the bodily miseries are mitigated. As it said in the Bhagavad Gita, one who's regulated in his eating, sleeping, and recreation, they can mitigate the miseries of this world. So at least for us, that physically we're not all getting sick all the time, and psychologically as well, things are relatively okay. At least speaking for myself. But one of the inevitable things that we run into living communally, living in the association of devotees, is trouble with others. We encounter challenges with others. So if we don't learn to tolerate other people doing stuff that we don't like, then life can become very difficult in this ashram or anywhere. That's what I've noticed. At the same time, we don't have to tolerate abuse needlessly. That's true. What can be considered abuse is relative to everybody. But, if it's causing such a disturbance that we can't continue practicing, then we may have to consider addressing and acknowledging that this is a problem. But generally speaking, I found most things that people do are actually tolerable if you want to tolerate it. One of the things that I've come to terms with, not to sound too depressing or anything like that, is that if you have high expectations of others, then naturally in your relationships you will suffer more. Why? Because the reality is, in this day and age, in Kali Yuga especially, where we've got such bad conditioning from an early age, our expectations for others, especially if we try to base them off the ideals that we read in the Bhagavatam, will never be met. In fact, I found in ashram life, I've become happier, or I've been happiest, when my expectations of others are at the very bare minimum. And even if they're not met, then if I lower them even more, then again, I become happy, because what are expectations really? Expectations are for others to make us feel good. But as I've been told, by some mentors, some seniors, the real expectation that we should have within the association of devotees is that all of our relationships should bring us closer to Krishna, and especially enthuse us, facilitate hearing and chanting in devotional service. If the relationships overall are doing that, then that's pretty good, at least from my point of view. But expecting anything else, expecting people to make me feel good, I don't know if that's an expectation to maintain. Because this life in this world is complicated. Relationships are complicated, and you will encounter challenges and troubles. So, but if you see it from a different light, you see all your challenges as being challenges to help you maybe overcome certain tendencies, overcome certain tendencies, and overcome personal issues, and overcome the tendency to react and respond negatively, then you may even welcome such challenges in relationships. Except every difficulty has been an opportunity to come closer to Krishna ultimately. Krishna is the ultimate shelter. So out of everything that I read in the purport, those were the two things that stood out to me. The second one was a bit more just off the top of the dome, so to speak. But hopefully it was relevant in some way. I'll finish there and thank you for your attention. And restate, actually this process of bhakti yoga is very scientific. And I find this verse quite valuable. And looking at the different aspects of the verse, you can think about it and think about it how it applies to you and try and apply it in your own life. So we thank Lord Rishabhadev for having such insights, sharing such insights in the purport and in the verse today, and Srila Prabhupada for sharing his insights in the purport. So thank you very much. Does anyone have anything to add, ask, stuff like that?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
very much for the very nice class, particularly the practical aspect of how to apply in our devotional life the instruction of Rishabdev, and particularly when dealing with the devotees. Thank you for bringing out the point we often come across, because we have sometimes great expectation from other devotees, but it gives us pain when we see that it is not made out. At least it happened to me, and so I'm very much benefited by your suggestion that we should expect the least, and when that is the standard, if we take it from others, then we are least affected. And in this way, we can, at least our devotion to the Lord is not, our assessment of the situation is corrected, and we can realize what the reality is, and in this way we can progress. That is a very nice point you have given us. Thank you for your, at least I have been benefited from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful insights. Really appreciate it, and speaking from your experiences as well. So I know you were mentioning a couple of things. One thing, of course, regarding I was thinking the two they both are related. I thought one thing regarding the very, very famous celebrities who unfortunately now are in not so good state right now, and also you're talking about the younger generation. So I was just wondering, just to be just to take another point of view, just to be fair to them as well, the younger generation. So probably they are dealing with different challenges, different from the previous generations. That's what I was thinking. Like the challenges are totally different from what they're facing, and also even the physical hormones itself, right? The hormones are very difficult to overcome at different ages, whether it's the old age or even at the young age. So I just wanted to have your view on that, like how to overcome the natural tendencies and the challenges, and attain our potential, and also so how to overcome this tendency, because you were saying like very like we at this moment we may be very in a very good situation, but very soon old age or disease catches up with us, and then we are reduced to a sorry state. So how can I overcome that sense of that so-called urgency, right? The urgency to enjoy, right? I'm saying, okay, very soon I'm going to be decrepit. Very soon I'm going to be in a old age home or something. So how can so I better make the most of it. I better do whatever I need to do right now. So how to overcome that kind of urgency to enjoy? Like, I just wanted a view on that.
Mm-hmm. So was that two questions or one question?
Two questions. Two questions.
The first one.
First one, with the youth. I think the the challenges and the other things the phase is, I thought it's you're quite different from what the previous generations faced. So I don't know whether you agree with that, or you think no, it's pretty much the same. Like yeah.
I would say I would agree with what you're saying. Yes, the challenges that they're facing are different. Like in my time, I didn't have, when I was a teenager, I didn't have Facebook. Facebook came when I was maybe 17, 18, something like that. I didn't have Instagram to look at, and only recently did TikTok come out. And if you've seen TikTok, for example, oh my God, that's like the biggest Maya app you could ever see. Then as well as that, climate change is causing them a lot of anxiety, probably being disappointed by authority figures and governments that they've seen. It's Kali Yuga is progressing, so the challenges and hardships that people are going through are also progressing as well, as is the nature of this age. At the university where I preach, we sometimes have discussions on different topics. We had a discussion on friendship and loneliness, and the course of these discussions is quite educational, because a lot of these young people, they have gone through experiences and had things happen to them which I didn't really experience, or people in my generation didn't experience to the same degree. So a lot of loneliness occurs from social media, and it becomes harder to make friends, especially people are becoming more introverted and socially anxious. And social comparison has increased exponentially because of social media. So what I was noticing in the course of discussing these topics with people, everyone was sharing their own story, was that within the past, decades since I graduated from uni, there's a whole nother layer of challenges and ultimately suffering that these young people are having to deal with. Their base level of suffering is higher, so to speak, than it was when I was their age. So they have to deal with that and try and manage and function in life. And yeah, naturally it's difficult. So I agree with you and what you're saying, that the challenges that they're facing are different, and maybe even more in quantity than what previous generations were facing. And as for your second question, how do we try and get over the urgency to enjoy? Yeah, I like how you put it that way, because we're trying to develop the urgency to get out of this world and be self-realized. So it's the opposite, and it's true. It's true. The tendency is for most people, when they hear that they're going to get old, without any realization and transcendental knowledge, deep realization, then the urge to try and enjoy in whatever time they have, it increases. Yeah, this is just the mentality most people are living by. Get it while you can. Get as much as you can in whatever little time that you can. If we asked a person, what would you do if you only had 7 days to live? What would most people say? Oh, I'd go on holiday, I'd travel the world, or I'd just, get completely wasted, or, I'd say goodbye to my family and friends, or spend time with them. Some are more wholesome, some are less wholesome, but the basis of all of that, the underlying premise is that, I need to enjoy in the time that I've got. But then when we look at Maharaj Parikshit, who the Srimad Bhagavatam is based on, he only had 7 days to live, and what did he do? He sat down and he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadev Goswami. So how do we become like Maharaj Parikshit? Well, how do we develop that urgency to hear? Know that that's the most important thing. The one thing that I would say is to hear more. The process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, it sets our priorities straight. It tells us what is important and it shows us what is unnecessary. Through so many examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you can see how people, invested in the material world and became unhappy and dissatisfied as a result. An example that just comes to mind is Shabari Muni. He was on the verge of becoming self-realized as a yogi, but after seeing two fish procreating, he ended up leaving that situation and going searching for a wife. And as we know, he ended up getting 50 and having 5,000 kids, as you do. But after a while, because he had obviously acquired some degree of knowledge in his past through his practices, through his austerities, he realized the futility of his situation and he gave it up. So the point is, in order to get over the urgency to enjoy, we need to change our priorities. And we change our priorities by hearing from the Srimad Bhagavatam as regularly as possible. And in that way, hopefully, we'll become more like that of Maharaj Parikshit when we hear such things as old age is coming, we're going to lose everything. And we'll instead invest more in our spiritual life. Yeah, that's what I would say in the time that I have. Does that help at all?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Is there anything else, or should we finish there?
Well, Vishnu, it appears there's no other person to make any comments or question, so the class may be ended. Thank you for your nice class. Vancha kalpadurubhasya kripasya patitam
pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Ananta Koti Vishnu Bindu ki His Grace Manobiram
Prabhu ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaur Premanande
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.